What is going on, guys? This is the Plan C podcast. I am Colin, joined here by
Cameron.
And today we are going to talk about what you would tell yourself in a past life.
And we will also be discussing the education system and the role diversity plays within that.
Higher education or lower education?
Well, we'll be talking about higher education for like the big news, but lower education for what we actually need to do.
Oh, fantastic. All right, you heard it from him. Here we go.
Let's do it. One of the topics I wanted to bring up was the issues within universities and racial quotas. Like, I'm sure you've heard of all the issues lately, which people are talking about. Should we get rid of affirmative action? Is affirmative action useful now? Et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things, I was talking to my parents and I was wondering, what are the big topics that people are talking about lately? And one of the things I heard of was Cornell actually has some controversy around this issue, and that would be that the spots that are there for African American students apparently have been taken, like around 40% or so have been taken by international black students, like Africans, Caribbeans, that type of thing. So I was just kind of gonna ask my boy Colin,
Yeah, man.
what he thinks about this issue.
Well, it's obviously an issue that the university feels that it's okay to simply replace, kind of in their opinion, one black person with another, when it's clearly like people who are still afforded different opportunities. So I think that, just why not both?
That's a good take.
Yeah.
I would say that from what I've researched, I think this is one of the things where people have gotten their kind of vitriol reaction in front of facts and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we know that these scholarships and these spots were not necessarily made for all black people in that way, because I feel like it's one of those things where we're conflating black as an entire group, and they're like, well, if it helps all black people, then it's all black people, but it's not really. It's this is clearly for segregation in America specifically ended 55 years ago, something like that.
63 years ago?
63 years ago,
Maybe? I
Well-
don't know. Yeah.
whatever, we'll fact check that later.
Yeah.
It depends
But-
on what state you're talking about also.
Yeah, that's also true. I think
And
federally,
what form of segregation.
I think federally, segregation in schools
So that
ended
would be-
about 55 years ago.
Yeah, but then they
The
had to.
Anti-Segregation Act was 1963, I believe.
But then they had
1963.
to escort black students into University of Alabama.
That was in the late 50s, early 60s. I mean, no, yeah, you're right. It would have been after 63. You're right.
Yeah.
You're totally
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, because it was integration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think it might have been 1970 something where.
That's a nut.
It cut.
Kenny was
There are
bad.
news
Yeah.
reports of that, and if you watch that, it is bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. But the point I'm making is that's really not that long ago, and
It's
it's
most of those people are still alive
still
today.
fucking alive. You know what I
That's
mean?
that is spooky.
My dad was alive back then.
Technically, my dad was alive
Yeah.
because he was born in 1962.
Yeah, what the fuck? My dad was born in 1957. My point is that things like redlining, segregation, and pumping of welfare into poor minority areas have definitely lowered the quality of living, but also the
Oh,
educational
yeah.
standards and which is why we have affirmative action, is to kind of bridge that gap a bit. And international students that are coming from Sudan with racks in their pockets are clearly not the target.
Oh, they
group.
come. I'm sorry. They. I don't mean to.
No, you can say they.
Yeah.
This is the Plan C podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, get out. Put the big boy pants on. You feel me?
I think if you are going to school internationally, you're either really smart or you're coming from wealth.
Oh, it has to be one or the other.
Yeah.
Which is the point, right? If you're dumb smart and you get in,
Yeah.
then you were meant to get in.
Yes.
But if you're dumb smart and then you also have the bonus of like the scholarships that you get from being just being black without any of the other additive things, it's like, well, that clearly wasn't made for you. But I have heard like some people be like, oh, well, not all black people are poor. It's like, well, no shit. But like if we're talking about generational wealth, you're talking about an average. So it's not like you're gonna be like, oh, you could just hold for income, then everybody gets it. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Redlining did not affect white people the same way it affected black people. There are other things throughout history. Every minority America has literally fucked. Like at one point or another, from Asians to black to Latinos now, which is pretty crazy, America has totally screwed them. So when affirmative action is put in place for stuff like this, it is specific and it's not just all lives matter type shit, okay? Okay, guys, so another issue specifically that I want to talk about was a bit more controversial, and I think you guys have probably all heard of it. It is the Asian Americans being admitted into Harvard at a lower rate.
Would you mind giving us some context, Cameron?
Okay, so I think it was about a year ago. It turns out that Asian Americans have been scoring like much higher than the rest of the minorities on SAT scores, and I actually have some stats for that. So if every section of the SAT has 800, Asian Americans are scoring 767 across the board, like on admissions for that for Harvard. And
Pretty good.
meanwhile, Hispanic Americans being 718, Native Americans, Native Hawaiian average 712, African Americans average 704, white Americans 745. So basically, they're on average shitting on the rest, but they only make up for 20% of Harvard admissions.
Does that count as a dunk?
That definitely counts as a dunk. That's like a meteor dunk.
Oh,
Like really, like 20 points on average, you're shafting the competition. Let's be real.
yeah.
So basically, they brought up this case saying that Harvard was preferring other races over Asian Americans in these scenarios, and that even though they were scoring higher, they weren't being admitted because of stereotypes such as like on the applications or on the reviews, it'd be like, oh, lack of interpersonal skills or like not a well-rounded student being the reasons they just got in, and they're saying it's racial discrimination through affirmative action, which is kind of ironic considering affirmative action is meant to combat that.
It's pretty backwards when you say it.
When you say it like that, it is pretty backwards.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we've definitely heard of this scenario from a lot of Caucasian people where they were saying that affirmative action is discriminating against them because not all poor people are minorities and therefore they should be offered the same shit. But I feel like we kind of debunked that in our last conversation about Cornell. You know what I mean? Like really, you know, institutionalized racism for white people. Are we gonna go there? Let's not. Like it's not. You're not gonna win that argument.
Yeah, no, that doesn't exist.
No, it's a smooth. That's a definite smooth brain take. Like definitely no wrinkles in your brain if you're making that argument. But on this issue specifically, we have to talk about merit. Because I feel like the biggest issue regarding this is
I love merit.
Merit, you know? But the biggest issue is that people are assuming that having the highest scores means that you should get into the school, which I think is an interesting idea because we know that the system can be gamed. Like if we're really talking about it, we know that if you have the money to afford tutors and you're in a higher bracket neighborhood where you can have good education, you're going to score higher. Also, the test costs money. You know, not everyone can afford to take tests 30 fucking times. You know what I mean? Like, let's be real. They're making bank on this. In fact, the College Board makes about over $1 million a year off of just SAT scores.
What's the College Board?
You know,
that's the website, right?
Well, it's the website, but it's also where you get your books from, and it's also the ones
Yeah.
that run the SATs.
Yeah, fuck College Board.
Yeah, fuck the College Board.
Yeah.
They're clearly just making money off of.
No, wasn't that the website? Remember there was that website where you could put your SAT scores and
Well, they own a lot of shit though. Like they're like
No, specifically, what's the name of the website?
the name of the website.
Isn't it College Board?
I have no idea.
Hold on.
I've been in college for a while now. It's not.
Oh, it is College Board.
It is College
Okay,
Board.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck College Board.
Fuck College Board. I knew it.
But I think. Well, by the way,
Making
as of October
millions.
1st, Asian Americans did lose this case.
Yeah.
And the reason they lost this case is because the data did not show intentional discrimination against Asian Americans in their admissions process. They just reviewed Harvard's thing and there was no data, which to me is nuts that we've had this whole thing going on for a year and no one thought to like do the data reference on that. Like really? Like is that like okay, we're scoring 737 on our SATs, but we can't actually look up the data whether or not this is happening or not? Like isn't that just sad?
And when you mean happening or not, you mean
the racial discrimination.
right.
You know, like you can actually look up, you know, studies and stats for how they're admitting students and how important test scores are, you know, etc. And so this also brings me back to like, why the fuck don't people look things up before they get on their freaking grandstand and make a whole issue out of it? And realizing that if you roll back all of affirmative action, you're like fucking the rest of the minorities as well. You know, that's not just like just Asian Americans now have things. Like obviously people that or other minorities that have already faced systemic disadvantages are going to get all their shit removed if you roll that back.
Well, you know, it would be, if that were to happen, it would be something to see what private universities would do. You know, because do they still want to promote? Sorry, America. Do they still want to promote diversity in trying to get more bodies to the school? Or are they like, I mean, we're just going to accept whoever gets in?
Well, you know, I think it would definitely be whatever makes the most money. You know what I mean? If diversity and those optics are going to be what brings in the money, then they'll do it. But knowing that affirmative action is hurting white students, there are more white people than minorities in
And then,
in
you know,
America.
that's what I was saying, like, those who just get in rather than trying to afford other scholarships.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But I think if they rolled that back, you would definitely see minorities would just be getting fucked again. That'd be how it'd be. And basically, I think a big problem right now in America.
Can you imagine if that actually happened?
It would be so bad. It would be so bad.
I would protest.
A lot of people would protest.
I've only protested a couple times in my life, but like I would definitely protest for that.
But I think an interesting thing when realizing both of these issues is that in America, I think you're realizing that people are really only willing to fight for their own interests, regardless of whatever group would be. I mean, the first issue is black people versus other black people. And now it's like Asian Americans versus other minorities. Like, don't you think it's just sad that we can't think past our race and like other differences to get to the core of these issues?
Not only past our own race, but our own class within our own race.
Exactly. I find that kind of disturbing and also like a microcosm for the situation that's going on right now is for sure people categorizing themselves and then fighting for their own issues and totally just like forgetting about anyone else's. And the problem is that these issues actually aren't racial. I think it's like, you know, they're not really racial issues. This issue is in education. It's not in race and it's in class. You know what I mean? I keep saying you know what I mean. Whatever. But this thought process is stopping us from getting to the changes we need to make in which these things wouldn't even be a factor. You know, so for example, standardized testing. So we've just gone through SAT scores, and we know the College Board is making a shit ton of money off of these standardized testing. And you're wondering like, well, you know, people never really talk about it. Why don't people talk about it? Like, is standardized testing the best form of education?
Do we know how much it is currently to take the SAT without any discounts?
I don't know. Is it $25 or $40?
I don't know, because it might be $40.
If it's $40, that's kind of insane. Because $40 across the country and like as a standard is like that's pretty high. That's definitely pretty high.
it currently costs 47.50 to take the SAT, 64.50 with the essay portion, and 22 for each of the SAT subject tests, not including the $26 registration fee. The ACT costs $50.50, $67 with the writing portion, and for each test, there are extra costs for late registration. Shout out Kanye West. Old Kanye West, to be specific. Advanced placement tests, AP tests, costs $94.
Yeah, but you see how insane that is?
Expensive to
That's
be smart.
It's expensive, and this whole argument is basically taking testing as basically if you test well, you should get into this school.
Yeah.
And this clearly is showing that testing is not just merit. Obviously, it's money, and it's just gaming the system in terms of your preparation and test prep. Like, that's what it is.
Can I plug something really
Go
quick?
ahead.
If you sign up for the census, it's like it's $20 an hour.
Okay.
And you work for 3 to 4 days. Just saying.
Look it up.
Yeah, look it up. Literally, if you are a U.S. citizen, you can do this.
Yeah, so this basically, I think the real topic in both of these issues, I think, is the fact that people are clearly prioritizing race when it's not the problem, just because that gets the clicks. But it's really about what merit is in America and our education system and what we should be prioritizing. Because I actually looked up, like, it's actually a pretty easy Google to look up what are the good qualities of an employee. You know, what should we be looking for in our employees? You can look up top 10 qualities of an employee right now. I'm sure you'll get pretty much the same shit from everybody. And they are effective interpersonal skills, which was apparently considered racist now. Whatever.
Are you
Listening.
serious?
That was one of the things in the Asian American thing. They were like, oh, well, they're saying that we
Oh,
lack
jeez.
this, therefore, but it shouldn't be. It's like a stereotype, and it's like, no, you know, interpersonal skills are actually extraordinarily important in the workplace. Listening, communication, open to feedback, like confidence, positive body language. You know, all these things are not tested by testing. Strong work ethic, that's tested by testing. That's cool. Hardworking, that's tested by testing. Passion is not tested by testing. Because we all know when we're in school and we're working hard to get these grades, do we really care about them? Hell no. I couldn't care about long division ever. You know what I mean? Give me short division. I don't like that shit. You know,
Short division is on a calculator, bro.
exactly. Shout outs to iPhones and Androids. But, you know, positive attitude, not tested. Problem solving skills, like real life decisions are not multiple choice. Like, let's get over this shit. Critical thinking, being adaptive, self awareness, emotional intelligence, team player, leadership qualities, good communicator, receptive to feedback, self motivated. None of these things.
Some of the hardest decisions that some of these kids have made is, should I buy this Gucci belt or not?
Like, you know, none of these things are tested by standardized testing.
You like that?
You know, and you know that schools are basically investing in kids when they're accepting them.
Oh, yeah.
It's an investment.
No.
Will this person become successful?
With the scholarship, especially?
Will they become successful and then donate back to our school, or we can say that we had this kid as our student?
Yeah.
You know? So standardized testing does not equal good employee.
You know Bill Gates literally has buildings named after him, and I'm pretty sure a school named after him at Stanford.
That's pretty wavy.
Yeah. shout out Sandro Hall.
Shout out Sandro Hall. And
You said
Sandro.
Chandro.
Sandro Hall.
Alessandro Hall.
Okay, so this brings me to the small country of Finland. So Finland has the best education system in the world for many years now. Behind them are places like, you know, Japan, China, UK, Canada, kind of America, and Korea. But, you know, Finland has the best education so far, and
South Korea.
South Korea.
Ooh.
South Korea. But Finland has the best education system, and they do not have standardized testing, except for one test you take after you finish schools. Yet they...
Which school?
after they finish high school.
There you go.
Cool. So the crazy thing is they do score incredibly high across the board despite having no standardized testing. They don't go to school until they're 6. After they finish primary school, they have a choice about whether they want to come back or not. But they all do because schooling over there is fucking awesome. You know, there's a lot more play. There's a lot more.
Is it free?
It's free. It's free as hell.
Up to what level?
Free.
Free
Through university.
Free phone football?
Yep. It's totally free. And it's interesting because we have this whole system of competition and testing based on the concept that standardized testing is the primary show of ability. Yet Finland's education system, guess what? 80% made by Americans, which makes you question.
Wait, what?
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah. Finland's education system, the knowledge behind it and goes into it is mostly American. It's not like they invented that shit. It's Dewey. This man Dewey, who's American, mostly made the Finnish education system. They adopted it,
God
and they're
damn
kicking
it.
our asses with it for the past
Why do
few
we have
years.
to be such assholes?
So this makes you wonder, right? So what exactly, even though we have the knowledge, why aren't we using new systems of education even though we have the possibility?
Money.
Money is totally the answer. So even though we have all these discussions about race and who's going to get into schools, these manufactured competitions that have been made through our education system, our universities being so hella expensive, you know, hella expensive, and the best education systems are there because they have the most money, the best universities have the most money, has been actually interfering with the education of our students and also the concepts which we base education on. Because if schooling's free, right, across the board, which is hard in such a big country, don't get me wrong, your taxes will definitely go the hell up if we ever nationalize education. And of course, the rich people would never let that happen, but we'll put that to the side. But if
There's also the Constitution and states' rights and shit.
states' rights,
Yeah, and all that.
etc.,
Yeah.
there are a lot of problems that we can't have that Finland, because they're so small,
Yeah.
are able to do. But if you take money out of like primary and high school education specifically, that means that the poverty in an area wouldn't necessarily mean you get a worse education. And these kind of almost eugenics type fucking arguments where like, oh, Asian kids are doing well or black kids are doing, white kids are doing better, would basically be removed. Because across, like, we're not really going to go into saying like, oh, Asian kids are like smarter than white kids or black kids just from being that race. Like, we know that's not the case. It goes into parenting, it goes into your education, how you're teaching your kid, and how you're teaching your kid to the tests.
And what values you give your kid.
What values?
Or I guess
especially.
instill in your kid.
Another thing, especially I find, is that, you know, behind Finland, and sometimes in terms of scoring this in front, is like Japan, China, and most recently Korea. But another important thing, Colin has something to say.
Which Korea?
South Korea.
Thank you for clarifying.
South Korea are really climbing up the ranks, but one thing you can actually look is the happiness index of a country. And in places like South Korea, which are now reaching all-time high of grades, also has the highest suicide rate of kids our age and kids in university in terms of developed countries by like a landslide. So that's something
That's
very
pretty
important
scary.
to think about. That is horrifying. So do you get these grades, which in the end do not necessarily translate to the workplace, and you throw away your childhood and your happiness when you're younger for no apparent reason when we already have education systems that clearly show that that's not always the ideal thing. Standardized testing is good in terms of recording growth and getting a standard, but besides that, because of standardized testing, but besides that, like, why are we putting so much importance in it? Do we really want our kids to be achieving standard? You know what I mean? Are we fighting to be average, to be standard? Like, why are we doing this? It really raises the question. Like, what's the point?
What do you think happens first? Our education system is overhauled, or a wall is built, or weed is legalized federally? Which do you think happens first?
I would say weed being legalized federally would
Honestly,
Honestly,
I would say a wall.
you would say a wall.
People are fucking scared, man. Yeah.
But the thing is that even the people who are scared, like,
Smoke weed.
no, like, don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
To a degree, and like also the amount of percentage of people who like who agree with decriminalizing and like legalizing weed is higher than. The
There
people
is
who
still,
actually,
but like the thing
like
is,
not all Trump voters actually want the wall.
dare. Well, I know that because my grandfather
Yeah.
voted for Trump and doesn't want a wall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You're talking about what is it, 46% of the country, and then like now shave it
Well,
down.
I think the main thing is legalizing weed is pretty smart because that makes money,
Yeah.
and then
Oh,
making
okay,
a wall
okay, but
is fucking stupid.
people in government are not smart.
No, I think people in government are smart, but constituents aren't smart, and they have their policies based on what goes well with constituents. Politicians are making bank regardless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not dumb. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just be a politician as like a side job? Nah, these guys went to top universities.
Most people
They got big
are
brains.
politicians as side jobs, brah.
You mean in terms of voting? Or
No, just in terms of they're a politician for 6 years, get in good with the lobbies and make your money elsewhere.
That's not really
I mean,
a side
look
job.
at-
That's
look
a
at
that's
Dick-
a main plan.
Look at Dick Cheney,
That's side job main plan
Well,
though.
Dick Cheney's also like
the
Dick
king,
Cheney is
the
Dick
king
Cheney,
finesser,
like so a completely other.
the king
like,
finesser.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's like whoa.
Literally kingpin.
But being real, the average constituent doesn't know like their head from their ass in terms of normal politics.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
To help bring it back to schooling, I would just put this one point out there is that we also have to remember that like this kind of like because the logic behind like testing is I need like like a scientific standard, like you know what I mean, like is so ingrained not just in education but in corporate America in the workplace, like that changing the schooling system kind of can't happen first. You know what I mean?
Before you
Because-
change the workplace.
You know what I mean? And
I
also,
actually
it would take so much because it's also ingrained in our psyche and zeitgeist.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, we always put numbers in front of everything, right? So if per se, someone decided to create a school, a small school, you know, Will Smith did it. Fuck, you know, what the hell? You know, a
Yeah,
small school using the Finnish education system recorded the data from primary school to high school. Those kids scored higher, got into all top universities. They released that data. There's gonna be some shit, you know, because you
Yeah.
can't get past numbers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also something to say about in the workplace, we all know that it's all about connections. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Oh.
by merit.
Networking
Oh,
networking is king.
It's king. How many I think all of people that have we could probably ask our followers, or if we have any right now. But you know,
We
how
probably
many
don't
good
'cause we
bosses
haven't
have you
published
had?
this.
You know what I
Oh
mean?
my God,
How many
yes.
good bosses have you had that really have the capabilities of an individual worker that's working under them plus more? We know that bosses don't necessarily always have the capabilities, and it's not always merit based like we'd wish it to be. And actually being a boss is a great place to hide your incompetency because you can put away all the blame on your workers
Yeah.
as you completely fuck up a company, as we've seen time and time again, and will continue to happen. So, in terms of this being actually realistic, I think it's not for a long time because of all the money that would be against it. But if there was someone that was going to be an individual donor that wanted to pioneer this project, I do think it'd be a smart thing to investigate because all these issues with competition and whatnot might actually be solvable through another avenue rather than just being my race should be doing better, you know,
Right.
because that's always going to be the case and it will continue to be the case.
What's your suggestion on what that action would be?
The action, you mean besides trying to test it through creating a school?
Yeah.
I would definitely be trying, if you're just a normal person, I would definitely be trying to get out data in terms of, I don't know, posters. It could be just in terms of normal conversation, just putting out there, or just being a parent and realizing that maybe your kid's test scores don't define him as a person and don't don't define as intelligence. That would be a mindset change that I think first needs to come before any actual institutional changes. And it's very important because, we have international data. We could totally be putting all our effort into standardized testing like Korea, and all of a sudden our kids are going to be killing themselves, and then what? Where are we heading?
Is that what the correlation is?
It's not obviously, as a man who does like to know of nuance, that is not the only issue in
Right.
South Korea, clearly.
Right.
But if you have these these kids are going to school from, we go to school from 8 to 3. And then
About.
they have school after school until about 6 or 7.
Yeet.
And if you have a kid that has no chances to play, no chances to have any social situations, they're only focused on testing. You're not testing, you're not worth anything. That's the mindset that goes into that. These kids are not going to be healthy mentally when they're getting older. I mean, some kids will prosper, of course. The kids that we were meant to prosper in these situations will have all the backing and will definitely do extraordinarily well. But that's not the average kid. The average Korean kid is not different than the average American kid. And we definitely know in terms of from being just a kid. Kids are kids. And being in that situation, we know if you took an American kid and put them in that situation, they on average would be screwed mentally.
Yeah.
Like, how many kids can really exist like that?
You
There's
think
also that
you
anecdotal evidence. Sorry.
you think with the pressure of it?
Just the pressure, the parental pressure, the cultural pressure that goes behind all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, how many you know what else is a problem in Korea?
Tell
South
me.
Korea specifically, old people being alone and committing suicide. South Korea also has one of the highest percentages for suicide of the elderly. So you have to think what type of resentment also is coming from kids that are like this, but also what are we valuing? What are we valuing through these teachings?
There's also the anecdotal evidence of how many overachiever kids can we all name that we know, who
Who burned out?
burned out,
Burned the fuck out.
who are in college right now, and it's they're overachieving, and they don't have relationship either.
They're not happy.
Yeah, with whether it be friendships or romantic or sexual, they don't have they're the
Or parental.
one who can,
Yep.
yeah, or the ones who go out and it's from Friday to Sunday night, blackout. You know what I mean? Whether
Yeah.
it's drugs, alcohol, both, fucking. You know what I mean?
Their people are finding ways to cope with the situation
Yeah.
they're in rather than actually existing and wanting to do what they want to do. Which brings me back to Finland, because Finland actually past your primary schooling, you can go into vocational school or you can go into higher education. 40% of those students choose vocational training. America, in my opinion, has no real avenues into vocational training because we're teaching to a standard. Our standard is you go to school, you go to university. Every kid has heard that shit.
Yeah.
Not going to college has never been an option for me, and definitely not an option for most of the people I know. Unless you don't have the money, it's either you have the money, you can go to college, you don't have the money, you can't go to college. Your life is basically based on that. That's the standard.
I think the other thing also is that with vocational schooling, one of the reasons America doesn't have it is because think about how not that long ago, one of the things it was you go to school or you go to university, or you go work at the GM factory, or you go work on the docks, or you go do this, or you go do that, and that basically was a vocational school. You would, if you were a construction worker, you would be
Apprenticeships were at an all-time
apprenticeship.
high.
You were and until the 80s. That was
Yeah.
very popular.
Mhm.
80. How many years ago is that? That's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to defend America, but it's just kind of interesting to see you know what I mean? There's no one's been oh well hold on. So what do we do with the fact that no one's actually actively taken a step to bridge that gap? So it's still go to college or I don't know. There's
Figure it
actually
out.
doesn't exist anymore, so fucking
Figure it out. No, it's definitely a thing where our jobs have definitely been changing. We're losing jobs, especially manufacturing jobs, etc. But I feel our education system should have vocational training for jobs that will appear in the future. That I feel is almost a no-brainer.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be sending kids to get a standard education where we all know most of the kids that go to college don't even do what their degree says. We should be focusing on what kids want to learn, because in Finland, if kids want to learn something, they will change their education system to fit what kids want to learn, which is logical, but never happens here.
Never.
Never. You would never even think of like someone going Common Core. Well, how about we learn about philosophy or writing or music for a second? You know, never happens. But we should be putting our money where kids want to learn, and also for jobs for the future, instead of just being like, oh, we don't know where to go. I wonder why. You're like, no shit. You haven't prepared people to have jobs for the future. They're not going to get them.
Well, people are also not not taught in schools how to make important decisions.
Yeah.
People are always taught to just kind of go with whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you are then put into adult situations like college, you don't know how to kind of properly discern what's important for you and what's going to really make the difference in your life or make you happy.
For sure. Like, I've definitely had I'm in college right now. I go to art college, which was a decision that I made because I felt like that was my avenue. But there have been it's my vocational. It's like that's what I wanted to do, and I decided to learn that. But I definitely have been having moments where I'm like, okay, if I'm in a situation where there's no one necessarily telling me to complete X assignment, there's no one like pushing me to do something, do I have the motivation and the skills to push myself further without that help? You know, in terms of my career past schooling, which I'm thinking about now, do I have the mindset that can further me like I see some of my peers doing, and I feel like I could possibly do it, but it's completely on your own. There's no thinking that I've learned that helps me from that besides critical thinking, and I definitely didn't get that from fucking schooling.
Yeah. I think,
Where would you say you gained that?
Oh, it's definitely from my parents.
From your parents?
Yeah.
Would you say like playing sports also made you a good decision maker?
Totally playing sports in like an actual structured system where there are people that you have to work with, just like you would in a job. People that you have to work with, you have to make decisions in order to score goals, in order to get to a common goal.
Yep.
That natural thinking is totally useful in a workplace. And also 100%. Why we should have sports in our schools.
Yeah.
Or just activities.
Any type of activity.
Just
team
social interaction without it revolving around education would just make so much more of a difference.
For sure.
And for it to not be through a screen as well, like interpersonal skills are so fucking important
key.
This day and age.
And we all know, and I'm sure a lot of the kids our age know, whenever you heard group assignment, everyone was like, oh,
yeah,
group assignment, or you know, like everyone's pushing all the work onto the smart kid. This is clearly like not healthy.
Yeah,
it's not healthy.
Yeah,
and there's no focus on it.
Like, and you know what? Like, why everyone's favorite class wasn't, you know, science, math, and they would say like, oh, lunch, oh, recess, oh, you know, gym. It's because they got to hang out with their friends and it not be about learning something.
But I think
my favorite class was everything because I skipped all of them.
But I think there are ways you can learn.
Jimmy Bats.
That was true.
Yeah, I think it's because there are ways that you can learn that are entertaining. Like when I said 90% of Finnish kids go back to school by choice.
Yeah.
You pull that in America.
Yeah.
Would you be going back to high school sophomore year?
I wouldn't have gone back to fucking
No.
first grade.
No way. You know?
Yeah.
There are ways to learn that are not through just like testing and like getting like, oh, you know, your teacher was like, oh, we have to get through this in order to stay on track. Fuck that. You know?
Yeah.
And even the kids that succeed in those scenarios, does that mean they know how to work with people? Because we all know smart people that are shit to work with.
100%.
100% the worst to work with. Don't listen to everybody else. You know, push other thoughts to the side. They might be intelligent, but they're not necessarily working with others. And when it comes to a company or a situation where you have to come together to fight, to like, not fight, but necessarily to work towards a common goal, they end up being liabilities.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's... And liabilities and just so many ways, whether it's the people around them
that suffer.
that suffer from their lack of awareness of how they're getting in the way,
Mm-hmm.
or just them not helping.
Yeah, or them being like emotionally not able to relate to other people. But before we get to the next topic, I just want to tie this into diversity because one of the things Finland has that we don't have is they're homogenous. There is only white people in Finland.
I don't get that.
And that is going to be a huge difference in whether we can do this or not, because the reason I gave the first two examples was specifically to show people only fighting for people that look the same, or whatever category that they've fit themselves into. Those are the people they fight for, and I think that shouldn't be the focus. But that being that a reality in America, we have a bunch of different genders. We accept people of different races.
And there are deep lying feelings within just like everyone, just due to the past societal norms
Mhm.
of the past.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, like, not gonna lie. Like, if you look at Canada, Canada didn't fuck every new category that appeared.
Yeah.
Every new race, every new whatever.
Just
And
the
that's-
ones that existed before.
Yeah, pretty much. But just that difference in history definitely creates a different culture in which now we're literally comparing ourselves to other races and other minorities instead of looking for the general picture.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be looking to compare. Asians shouldn't be looking to compare themselves against blacks.
You know what really
Blacks
sucks
shouldn't
though?
be
Well, I
comparing
think it's
themselves against
also
other
just
people.
like they're being. I think it's one of those fucked up. This is my own hot take. Is that I'm sorry. Let me get this off. And then
Yeah,
I'll-
that's fine.
Like, it's not about really, it's not about race. In that it's like not like, oh well, black people. I'm Asian, so it's like it's like I'm trying to advance my. It's like it's realpolitik. Like
Yeah.
it's like I literally like I who the fuck do I gotta step on? I gotta step on them. Fuck it. Like I want literally the best thing. You know what I mean for me.
Mhm.
And you know what I mean. It's completely selfish. And
That's
it's
what it
like
is.
That weird like. It's like, oh, you don't even fucking care, do you?
It's
You're just a
selfish.
fucking-
It's selfish because no
psychotic.
one's willing to say that fighting for just your race is selfish. No one's willing to say it. And Plan C says it here first. If you're
Yeah.
fighting for just your race and not the advancement of your people in general, you're selfish.
You know what really sucks? That none of this would have to exist if white people weren't really fucking shitty for 300 years.
That's also true.
Yeah.
That's also true.
Because then it wouldn't, there wouldn't be this deep rooted kind of just like lack of camaraderie. Rather than being Americans, you're white or black.
And I mean, I think also when I say, even though it is selfish to just be for your own race, in America, it was a situation of survival, and it kind of still is.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
people, no one's looking out for us, so how can we huddle together and fend for our own people? And I completely understand that. That is something that I've obviously had to deal with, and I think a lot of people have, but I do think now when we're most connected is a time where we should be putting aside our personal differences and definitely pushing forward the idea of individuality and thinking past how can we help our race and how can we help everyone in general, because there are solutions. And that actually brings me to the end of this topic. So all these things about education have also really got me thinking about when I was younger, what would I have liked to be different? Because we've all lived through this education system. I'm in college now, I'm almost done, and we're talking about it in retrospect. But from a personal standpoint, small things and small changes, because we've been talking about really big changes that would definitely have to take many years and a lot of money to do. But for personal changes, what would I have liked to be different when I was younger? And
Yeah.
my partner Colin, I think, has a few he wants to talk about.
Yeah, so just when you think back to kind of those most formative years, middle school and late elementary school, early high school, high school in general, you kind of just think that like you wish you had a way to learn how to express yourself rather in ways that were healthy, and found coping mechanisms that were healthy. And I think that's just something that you can teach in school now, and should be taught in school now. If it means having having some kind of group therapist come in for an hour once a week for each class, why the fuck not?
Yeah.
I think it's important to teach kids how to have coping mechanisms and to learn what to do when you feel horny, what to do when you're feeling like you want to fucking kill yourself, what to do when you're really fucking angry and you literally want to choke someone out. I think that teaching somebody at a young age how to properly process your emotions in a way that is not necessarily constructive, but can lead to you not losing your shit every time something bad happens, which is something something that a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
I find that people, especially with anger, have such a hard time rationalizing anything they're hearing because they're so focused on. Well, they just see red.
Yeah.
Is a good way to say that.
And I think it's like people are being shoved into a very rigid system which doesn't offer the flexibility
Yeah.
to help kids mentally through it. And there are no classes that you have and there's no breaks that you have. It's just constant. And things like this, they definitely over time explode. And
Yeah.
we just know that happens. But
Why do you think most men like drop dead at like? There's
Yeah.
so many men that like just drop dead at fucking 50.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They just have a heart
Like,
attack.
why does he have a bad heart? I mean, he ate like shit. You know what I mean? Like men just drop dead. Like
I also think that people learning how to gain perspective is also something very important to learn.
I was actually just about to say, like,
Great minds think alike, man.
yeah, for real. But like people learning how to communicate,
Yeah.
I think it's definitely like even before perspective, people learning how to really talk to each other and get across their ideas and critically think about their ideas is something that we completely lack in our schooling. And should like think about it. We have like have you ever heard of like we have like debates and stuff like that. There's like actual programs for it, but like
Socratic seminars.
Yeah,
And that
we really never do that shit. But I think it's something.
It always evolved into a race debate. At the
Yeah,
end of the day.
it's always like, oh, we're gonna talk about race or whatever feel good
That is
kumbaya
that-
type shit every freaking time.
If you think about it, that's like so interesting that it always came back to race. Just like if you think of the mindsets of all students across the board, and
I think that might also be because we live in New York, though.
that's true. That's true. But just the feeling to immediately need to defend your race.
But I think, which will actually expound to people who live in homogenous places in America.
Yeah.
But the fact that
the Nevadas and the Wyomings.
yeah, but the fact that it comes down to race, but these are debates at an age where we don't even see the effects race has on us yet.
No.
That's the interesting part,
No,
right?
yeah.
Because we don't even know. We hear about it. It may have happened to a family member. Most, not everybody. Most of us don't have any like real anecdotal evidence or anything that would support this, but it's ingrained in us.
Yeah.
The same way it might be.
Zeitgeist.
The same way it might be ingrained to like for white people to be like, oh, those minorities, whatever, despite never seeing a minority in their life.
Can you imagine if, cops were given a 5-month just like psych training?
Oh,
I don't think it would help.
You don't think it would help?
You don't think like what about a year of psych training?
No.
What if you were required to have a degree in psychology to be a cop?
I think there would be no cops.
That's true.
I think there would be no cops.
Why do you think that it wouldn't work?
Because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him think. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing, and then it's like
You don't think it would give any perspective?
I think it would be. I think the way to give them perspective is to change how we teach history. And
Well,
to-
that's another debate in
that's
itself.
a bigger that's a bigger, but like I don't think being like this is
The Daughters
look,
of Liberty, bro. Woo.
the what?
Daughters of Liberty. You never heard about this?
Oh, is that the the people like daughters of the American Revolution soldiers shit, or is that like what is that?
It's the women who like wrote history books in the 1960s and like before that, like just kind of with just fucked up history, kind of painting the Confederacy as
Oh yeah, yeah,
heroes and
yeah. Like, but my point about like teaching history and teaching perspective is like that's really like the only class in school like in across the board that teaches perspective.
Mm.
In like you know what I mean? Like that's the only
what?
thing.
I would-
What
I
class?
would-
What class do you? mean?
History.
Oh, history.
It's the only one that you could really get perspective on. And so the thing is, like, when you're coming, like, look, people, like, a lot of, like, cops are going to come from the background that they're going to come with the baggage they come with, like, from their background. But if you were to teach history in a way where it's actually like, well, let's actually, like, not, like, we're not going to just learn this one thing, but we're going to learn this other thing, and we're going to kind of compare it, and you know what I mean? Like, especially when you have a history that is as weird, like, and bizarre as the new worlds,
Mhm.
basically like South America, North America, every country, and especially America's, like, and so complicated, and like that's the only thing I think you could actually use to teach people perspective. Like, if you gave cops that like year-long training, I think honestly it would be like in one ear out the other. 'Cause
Mm.
let's be honest, we know cops. You know what they do during those fucking training
I-
things, Colin? They don't pay attention.
No.
I would definitely say it would have to happen during the earlier years in terms of like middle school, high school,
Yeah.
where you can put that history into perspective and just teach history in different perspectives. But not only that, I think in those early years, having some not training in psychology, but necessarily like training where you can deal with your emotions, like he was talking about earlier, would definitely be an extreme help to cops. And the last thing is training in things like philosophy and understanding. I think is very underrated in how you view people.
You know what's kind of interesting is that I don't know if you are doing. I don't know if you know about Jesuits or like, but like kind of what it's like, like just when I'm hearing you talk about education, you kind of sound like you're talking about a Jesuit education.
I don't even know what that is.
So it's like Jesuits is like the order of like help me out here.
So Jesuits are the sect of priests who are teachers, pretty much. Like our current pope is a Jesuit.
Hmm.
But that's a very good thing because our current pope is very, very good. We like our current pope a lot.
Except for meeting with Kim Davis, but we're not gonna bring up Olson. But Jesuit, like part of the Jesuit philosophy is
He's opening the door.
Is
Sorry.
like debating things. So like like Jesuits are like the very Christian Catholic people who would be like, well, all right, what's the benefit of Satanism? Let's talk about it. Like, let me read that book. You know what I mean?
They're kind
Yeah.
of the most liberal, if you will,
Of
in
the
term or not necessarily liberal. Liberal is a
Yeah.
bad term. I would say
Open-minded.
open-minded.
Yeah.
They're the most open-minded in terms of like.
And a Jesuit education. I'm sorry, you're saying.
I was just gonna say they're probably the most open-minded like sect of Christianity, just kind of throughout the history of Christianity.
That's pretty cool. I will say though, I'm not really for religious institutions. I'm cool with religion,
Yeah.
but religious institutions kind of fuck things a lot
But
of
that
times.
philosophy of
Yes.
education, and also it's also kind of just of like Europe at a certain time, like when it was like college in like Renaissance time was literally it was not about like here are the skills you need for a job. It was like learn about this, make yourself a well-rounded person, and then for a long time in America, that was also the philosophy, and like that's kind of like the problem now is you know what I mean. If I can try to condense what you were saying earlier, which is like basically the problem. I mean, the problem seems to be that we're putting college as the vocational school, and there's no vocational school option.
Well, not only
You know
that,
what I mean? Like
but
that's required for you to get a job.
but
it doesn't
what
make
we're
sense.
learning, specifically, what we're learning is not
Yeah.
necessarily helpful in the workplace, but also in life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Learning things like philosophy, because don't get like when I was in high school, I was the same. You know, I was like, oh, you know, black issues, whatever, whatever. I just kind of you would hear things and you naturally adopt them into your personal philosophy.
Headlines became
Yeah, headlines became your
Yeah.
mind. And taking that and being able to really get down to the bones of the issues that you're thinking about is one of the biggest things I think that separates that could possibly give people perspective on other racial issues because a lot of the issues actually aren't about race, which is the most important thing. They're not. People make them about race because people are honestly sometimes pretty simple.
Yeah.
I don't know another way to say it.
Occam's razor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people instead of like grinding things down to the details will naturally take the headline, the standard, and they'll run with it. And if we teach people how like if you really get down to it and you think what's the difference between a black person and a white person, there's really nothing besides history and pigment.
Yeah.
There's nothing. And when you take that and you have that thought process when you're dealing with someone in a real life situation or you're dealing with a thought in a real life situation that might be bolstered by whatever you've learned from your parents or whatever type of if it be hatred or preconceived notions, if you have in your mind that this person's the same as me, but he just has a different history, you can really more objectively think about the things that are going on because it's subconscious. Most of it is subconscious, the biases that we have. And if we teach kids to be aware of their subconscious biases and how to deal with emotions and how to really engage with data, I think a lot of these issues will become issues. Well, there'll be issues still, but they won't be about race. They'll be about things that we can actually change and about things that will actually benefit people. You feel me?
I got you.
Yeah.
So going back on what you would change, what do you think of having like not only a school nurse but a resident school psychologist?
Oh, for sure.
Do you
It.
what?
That shit's great.
I think it should be considered a class. I think you should have a class which would essentially be
Personal
you-
psychology?
personal psychology.
Per psi?
Yeah, you know,
Per psi.
you would learn about psychology, and also you might even be with a psychologist and be working
like
through your
meet
issues.
one on one?
Yeah, meet one on one, like a
Is that
guidance
what a
counselor,
guidance
like a
counselor is?
guidance counselor,
Nah.
but like not
A
one that's
guidance counselor is somebody with like a bachelor's degree in like
Well, I feel like a guidance
Yeah.
counselor should be. I was lucky. I went to a school where the guidance counselors were like
doctors.
like had psychology, PhD, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Psychology degrees.
Doctor.
But-
I think almost every administrative person, like at the highest level of my school, had
but
psychology.
there's usually not that many guidance counselors per school, and also you're not required to see one. If it was a class, it would be something that you actually have to go to, and you actually have to understand what you're learning. And I find that would be actually kind of
But
important.
then I think the problem, just to play devil's advocate, is as someone who was very like fuck school, I fucking you know what I mean, like.
Mm-hmm.
Like because like for my own reasons, like I had problems in school and whatever. Point being, like, if you turn it into a class, then that just makes it education.
Well, I'm just saying if it's
You know
like
what I mean?
if it's like once a month, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
you think that's gonna be
I
like
feel like it should be a meeting, just being like, yo, like, and also kind of like a thesis of schooling. You know what I mean? Like, just.
But I
being-
mean, it could also be like
Yeah.
a group meeting. Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily one-on-one psychology. It could be, you know, a group meeting where people just like
Like a
talk
group of 5 or
yeah,
something?
like that. You know,
That
just
would be good.
early before school, people just get to like talk together and really hash things out. One thing that I wish I would have told myself when I was younger, just go and answer the question, and something that I always try to tell myself is realizing my lack of knowledge. I find
Tell me what you mean.
like there's so much information in the world, and there's so many books, articles, data. There's so much, and the thinking that I could possibly be read up on almost any issue is laughable, and I completely understand that. And even though now I talk about these things because I think some other people don't know it, I always have to come to the table knowing that there's a world of things about these issues I don't know about.
Yeah.
There might be a factor, there might be some point of data that I might learn after this that might completely change my opinion. And if I had told myself that there was so much more information in the world when I was younger, I think I'd be much more open to learning about other things and listening to other people. And I find that's really important, even today.
Yeah, all right. I think that's a good place to wrap up. Good job by you, man. This was a good pod, I think.
Very informed.
Very informed, yeah, for
I
sure.
feel like I learned something.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel informed?
It's just a good thing to talk about, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel you. I think it's something that if people keep talking about it, if people keep thinking about it, somehow things can kind of change. Because, you know, in that situation where people that are listening who are parents or whatever, they might think one time, you know, oh, maybe I shouldn't be yelling at my kid for getting this bad grade on this test. Even something that simple. Something that simple, you're like, oh, my kid might actually have an interest in something vocational or maybe something creative, and maybe that's important.
Yeah.
Maybe we should look into that.
Which is like kind of the message of like Gary Vee for, I know Colin doesn't like him, but like that's kind of part of his message is like, that shit doesn't matter.
Well, it's
You know
not
what
that
I
it
mean?
doesn't. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it's just it's not the only thing that matters.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but his message is like, if you're good at that, great. But if you're not, like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, there are other
You know what I
things.
mean? Like-
There are other things. Yeah, that's been our Plan C podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We've been on a pretty wild journey today.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you listening to our separate rambling conversations. Thank you very much.
This is Cameron,
This is Colin.
and we also have our boy James on the sound and giving his perspective.
Yeah.
Shout outs to him.
Shout out, James.
We always appreciate him.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a nice day.